Today we find science is fun and useful. So, as I've been taking this Jeep apart, you've probably seen a lot of rusty parts coming off. Granted, a lot of the worst of the rusty parts, they came off before we started filming, so some of those, can't really show you that, but I can show you the putting it back together as we get to that stage, and I can show you some of the rust removal. I'll show some clips today of what I'm doing with the frame, because the frame's just too big for this idea. Unless I really wanted to get intricate. Now I could build something like this and tear the frame off, tear the engine off, tear the axles off, get the frame all on its own and do this. I'd love to, but I don't have an engine hoist and I honestly don't have the time for all that. So what I'm going to do today is start my first experiment with electrolysis rust removal. What I've got here down here, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I'll show you here in a second, is a piece that goes right up underneath the tub. It's where the parking brake handle, where that cable goes down and splits to both the driver and passenger side rear, because on my Jeep, the TJ, I've got disc brakes, but I've also within that got a parking brake on both sides. Granted, before this is all back together, I should probably adjust that parking brake because it's never worked great. But let's get to work here. What I've got so far, and I'll put a link to a video that describes this better, but basically it's a water bath with washing soda inside it. Now, washing soda isn't baking soda. It's different, so just make sure you get the right stuff. Around the edges, I've got 4 pieces of rebar. I've got about 1.5 feet just so they stick up plenty. Maybe in the future I want to get a bigger tub, do bigger parts, but for now this will do what I'm trying to do. So these 4 pieces of rebar are going to be my anodes, the positive, and so you'll see here on my battery charger I've got the positive, the red, hooked to one of these, and they're all wired together with copper around the outside. The video I'm linking below actually shows how to do all this with the anodes, the insulating wood, the cables, and how to wire this all up. It's a great video. If you're looking at doing this, I highly recommend going down to the description, clicking on that link for the YouTube video. It's off of Wood TV for woodworkers, or Wood Magazine, I believe. And it just describes in great detail and yet quick and easy how to do this. Highly recommended. But so I've got it set up. This is going to be my negative. So I've got a wire wrapped around this wood insulator, and I've got the same thing here, wire wrapped around my part, and the part is actually going to be the cathode, the negative terminal basically. And I'm going to hang it off of my little wire hanger there and drop it down into the water so it's suspended inside this water. Now, when I hook this up, I'd like to point out a few things. One, the off gas that this produces is actually hydrogen and oxygen. Together, they're both extremely flammable. Together, they're explosive. So make sure you're doing this outside or somewhere extremely well ventilated. And make sure when you hook this up that it's not plugged in. It might be off camera over here, but I've got the plug laying here very obviously unplugged, so that when I hook this up, I don't create a spark that blows me up. The other thing is make sure you're not using anything that's galvanized in here, because that actually produces hexavalent chromium. Galvanized chrome, stainless steel, any of that stuff produces bad stuff when it goes through this process that you do not want to breathe. It's like cancer causing, all sorts of bad stuff that will kill you in the long run. But if you've got all that down, it's a fairly safe process. Let's give this a try, and I'm going to describe a few things to you. Okay, I had an issue. My charger is actually kind of a smart battery maintainer. Hopefully this will work. It might not, because it tests the battery as it goes, and doing so, if it recognizes this isn't a good battery, it won't actually charge. So if this works, hopefully it does, I'll use it. If not, I might have to go get a battery charger. But since I can't plug it in over here, because what it's doing, as soon as I plug it in, I've found this on other batteries too. If I hook them up first and then plug it in, it like freaks out the computer or something and it doesn't charge. So I had to plug it in over there, but it's got a quick disconnect, which I believe should at least eliminate some spark problems. Okay. Turns out the smart charger's not going to work, so I am going to have to get a real charger rather than just a maintainer. Okay, I let that first part run overnight, and now the water's nasty. The rods seem to have a little bit of rust on them, but I'm ready to pull out the part, and I've got here some just plastic bristle brushes, so we're gonna give it a shot, see what we can clean off. We'll get the hose running and see what we got. Okay, as you can see here, it comes out still looking like it's got rust on it. But take a look. Let's look at this spot here specifically. See, it's still got red on it. I'm gonna put this down in the water. Take the plastic brush, scrub just a little bit. And it looks great. It's clean, bare metal. There are a few tight corners that are kind of hard to get into here, on this part specifically. But it seems to have done the job well. I would have put a lot more time and effort into this if I'd have been scrubbing it all with a wire brush or even a wire wheel or a flap disc or something. And I've done a lot more damage to the metal too, so this is just a great solution if you ask me. Okay, let's get a good look at this part. Rust has been converted. Here you can see, I mean, it looks a little silvery. That's just basically the bare metal where there's no primer on it. Now, this will rust really quickly because it is exposed and it's wet. And, let's see a few spots I missed here. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to throw some primer on it pretty quick. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to have a like new part here. Get a couple pictures of this stage, and I'll get a couple pictures of the final stage. Stay tuned. Well, it seems to have worked. Let's give this a try on a few other parts. Okay guys, tried out another part. Actually two parts. These were the rear bumper brackets, and Here's a picture of what they looked like before. They were extremely rusty. They've been in the electrolysis bath right now for probably 5 hours. I could probably do a little better if I wanted to run them for like 24 hours and just really get everything off. But this is pretty decent for what I'm concerned about. They're going to be a lot better off than a lot of the rest of my frame, to be honest. So what I've got here is still showing a little bit of pitting, a little bit of rust coloration, but for the most part we're down to a more metal finish. There are some spots like in the corners here where there was so much rust buildup that I didn't knock off before throwing it in, that some of that didn't get a full exposure, I guess, to the chemical process. So I think what I'm going to do, and so far I've only brushed it with this plastic brush. I think I'm going to pull out the wire brush, give it a few minutes, or maybe not even that, maybe just a minute or two of that, see if I can get some of that the corner stuff. I've got another wire brush here that's smaller. Get some of that corner stuff out of there and see what it looks like underneath, and then I'll let it dry a little bit because I just had to rinse them off, and get them painted up. Okay guys, I gotta say I'm pretty happy with how these turned out. I mean, they are showing the pitting that the rust had already done, but you've seen the original pictures of how they looked before, so you've got to expect that the metal itself was damaged. And yet here they are, rust removed and sealed up with a primer. I will end up, once I do the frame in the POR, while I'm at it, I will paint these up as well. So there'll be a whole nother video for the POR and the process that entails, but I think we're going to be good. And so I am closing out this video, but the process will continue. I'll keep going through the parts I've taken off, figuring out which ones are rusty and which ones are still salvageable in a way that I can just get the rust off. This part, actually, I'm not 100% sure how much of the metal's left. I may end up getting a new one. Once I get it all cleaned up, we'll see if it's still sturdy. That's actually the battery mount. So I guess I'll just close it out here. I've made some good progress on the parts. I mean, you remember what this guy looked like. Let me get to where the light is. And what it looks like now. I mean, it's a pretty darn clean part compared to what it was. And I'll be pretty happy to put this up under the Jeep. When I do the POR, like I said, I will POR this as well because it's going to be underneath and exposed to the road salt and wet. But all in all, I'm going to consider this a success. Here come the dogs. Hi, Bailey. And as you'll see when this is all done, when I pull that part out of this water, hi Toaster, when I pull that part out of this water, it's going to still be covered in that ferrous oxide, and I'll take a brush to it, I'll wipe it off clean, and it'll be nice and clean afterward. But
you wanted to visit?
I guess.
You kept pulling.
Hi, buddy.
Come here so Daddy can do his
It gives the part new life. Dogs running by.